Hello and welcome to what I think is my first video on this channel. And well, this wasn't, I didn't know I wanted to do this video or a video like this until, what is it, 10 minutes ago. But yeah, basically what I thought I should do, or I thought would be interesting, is to do like a video talking and reminiscing on all the Japanese books I read this year. And yes, I think that's what I'm gonna do. And to clarify, this isn't um, scripted, as you can tell. And many of these books I really don't remember correctly because how do I explain it without sounding pedantic? Because I read a lot this year, and some of these are from January, and I really can't remember everything. Well, then, without any particular order or how I read them, I think I'll start. Well, first, one of the books I read this year was this beauty here, Kino's Journey, Kino no Tabi, the first volume. And as you can tell, well, let me find a regular size book. Mm, right here. As you can tell, the Dengeki Bunko, which is the editorial of this book, like bunkos are really small. And fun fact, this was the first time I bought bunko books because I got the entirety of this series. And well, Kino's Journey is a masterpiece. It's truly a very good book series about this traveler named Kino who travels, of course, to many and various countries, and like every country has like their very interesting life lesson for the reader, and yeah, it's a pretty nice read. The first book is, I don't think it's the best of the series, but it's still like a pretty fun and light read. Like it's very light on text, and yeah, all the stories are fun to read, but they do get better as the volumes go on. This one, I think my favorite story of this volume was Colosseum, which was adapted in both anime adaptations of Kino's Journey. And then, which one? This one. It's called Otona no Kuni, or what was the name? Adult Country. It's like pretty good, and this is like the story to read if you want to read anything of the first volume. Like, if you want to read it completely. But this story, The Adult Country, is definitely the one I enjoyed the most, and truly the one that made me the most emotional of this book. Well, then up next, will be the second volume of Kino's Journey again. It's, I don't know, it's better than the first volume. Yeah, I think so. I think it does get better as the volumes go on. Well, let me see which stories are. Yeah, this is a very good volume. For example, this one, Yasashi no Kuni. How is it translated? Like, mm, wholesome country? Oh my god, I don't know English. Well, this one also was adapted into anime, and it's like the best story out of this volume. And also Hon no Kuni, the book country. This was also adapted to the anime, but between the anime and the book, these are actually completely different stories. The one of the anime is or completely original, and yeah, if you want to read a country with the same name as what was adapted on the anime, but the story is completely different, this is it. Also, this is how they look without the dust covers. Like, pretty sleek, if you ask me. Here it says Kino no Kuni, the beautiful Kino no Kuni, Kino no Tabi, the beautiful one. Okay, then up next, finally, NisiOisiN. This monstrosity is one of NisiOisiN's non-series books. This one is called Nanmintante, which means the refugee detective. And I mean, like, it's decent, I think, but I really didn't like it. It's about this. This one is the book that I don't absolutely remember for God's sake. It's about this girl called Madoi Shoko, and it's a story about how she is unemployed, well, gets unemployed, and goes living with her uncle, whose name is, I think, Madoi Kyoki, and she's unemployed and then goes living with her uncle. And what happens then is that her uncle um, gets gets framed for a murder which he didn't commit. And then what happens is that Shoko meets with the refugee detective whose name is Nebukayoki. And then the rest of the story is Madoya and Shoko and Joji going back and front from Kyoto to Tokyo, making like various interviews and like investigating the crime and whatever. And it really isn't that good of a book. Like, obviously, it's NisiOisiN. It's like the way it's written is always like very nice to read, but the story is just like one of the worst things I read from NisiO. Like, it's the most vanilla detective stories you'll read out there, and especially coming from NisiOisiN. And in comparison to many of the non-series books he has written, this is definitely like a pretty big letdown. I think it's one of the, if not the initiation book I've enjoyed the least. But yeah, it's not that bad, but also it's not worth reading. Like, I wouldn't say I wouldn't like if it got translated, but there are definitely many Nisio books who deserve to be translated first than this one. It's not good. And like the thing with the detective, the refugee detective with the word refugee, you imagine like, oh my god, it's like I don't know, a war refugee or something like that. It's nothing like that. It's like a pretty big letdown, like it when Nebukayoki, the refugee detective, gets introduced. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the refugee detective because I live in a net cafe, and you're like, what? That's so lame. Okay, on to the next books. Again, NisiOisiN. I read a lot of NisiOisiN. Well, this is the best book, one of the best books I read this year. It's like pretty fucking amazing. It's Kimi to Boku no Kowareta Sekai, translated as Or Broken World. It's like most amazing, the most amazing of it, or if not the one of my favorite mystery novels ever. It's about these, how do you call it, like these school students. The protagonist is called Hitsuchi Samatoki, and it's like I don't even know how to explain it. It's like you'd have to read it. It's like a pretty amazing story, and it's an amazing story, and cooler, um, even cooler mystery. And the characters are just such a pleasure to read. And yeah, I own this book in tankobon and in hardcover. This is how the tankobon looks with a bit of cover. And yes, this is one of the best. Well, in my opinion, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate if I say the best NisiOisiN series because, well, there's Monogatari and Saregota, but it is definitely this NisiOisiN series that has resonated the most with me, and definitely the NisiOisiN series which I have enjoyed the most. It's just like you'd have to read it to get it. It's just like such a fun read for mystery novel nerds and like pretty much everyone else who isn't a mystery novel fan, because the characters are like such a mystery novel nerds, and like all the mystery talk and everything is just like a pleasure to read. Like characters are fun, mystery is good, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. The story is about this um, how do you call it? Like a student on the school of the protagonist and his friends that gets killed one day, and well, they don't have to, but they want to solve the case. That's pretty much it. This is also a pretty nice hardcover. It's pretty pretty dense, and like it just looks so pretty. This is how it looks. No title on the spine on the, and here's the title: NisiOisiN and Kodansha, who is the editorial for this book. Oh yeah, and this thing is something that came with the book. It doesn't come with every copy, but I think it's a little extra that the seller I bought it from, like added as an extra, which is like the basic text of NisiOisiN, which talks like about all his series he had published until what year was it? 2007. So the Sarigoto series, the JDC tribute, which JDC is a pretty amazing series. I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. Here, the Sekai series, which only the first volume was published when this came out, I think. After that, the Ningen series, which, funny enough, I'm reading I have it right here, the first volume of the series. I'm reading it right now. And then Rizuka, which I've read the first volume. It's pretty amazing, and it also has a manga adaptation, which is I think the best manga adaptation NisiOisiN has ever gotten. The art and the story are just so good. And here is the top NisiOisiN characters. As you can tell, on the top 10, there's, I don't think, oh well, there is only on number 5, and in number 5 there is only a Monogatari character here, which is Senyoga Harahitaru. On number 1, it's Ichan, Serosaki, Jun, Tomo, and well, pretty much only see characters until that point in like ranked, like fans voted for the best character. And as you can tell, Monogatari wasn't that popular yet, because if this was done today, I assure you the top 10 will be Monogatari characters. Then there is Ningyo ga Ningyo, which I'm going to talk also because I also read it. The Sarigoto Dictional, which I also read this year, which I'm going to talk in a bit. And then the Ex-Holic Another Holic, I think the X's aren't pronounced, which is Holic Another Holic, which I read last year. It got an English translation. It's a pretty amazing book. And then there's Death Note Another Note, which is also a pretty amazing mystery book. Then there is Monogatari series, which I think, yeah, at this time only the first two volumes were published. And after that, Katanagatari, which I have read with the exception of the last 3 books, because, well, they are pretty expensive in English and I have yet to buy them. Okay, that was Sekai 1. And then with Sekai 2, which I'm trying to remember what was the name in English. It was Eerie and Enclosed. Oh wait, it was Eerie and Artless. Eerie and Artless Enclosed World. Give me a sec. I think I have the names here. It's called, yes, Eerie and Artless Enclosed World. It's also pretty amazing. Definitely not as good as the first one, and so far of the of how much I've read of the series, it is definitely my least favorite book. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's like pretty good. Here's how it looks without the dust cover, just like every other Kodansha book. The back cover. This character is pretty amazing. If I remember, her name is Fuyako, and yeah, she's a lot of fun. Like once again, this is a pretty good book, but in comparison to how good the first and third volumes of the series are, this one is definitely the one at the bottom. Well, then here I have the hardcover for that same book. It's like again very pretty. This is how it looks. And this is how it looks without the dust cover. Again, very incredibly pretty. Again, the title, NisiOisiN, and Kodansha. Okay, next. Next is the third volume of the series, the last one that I've read because I also own Sekai 4, which I don't remember the name, and I also own I don't know the fifth volume. It hasn't come out yet in Japan. So yes, this one is also a pretty amazing book, like all of the Sekai series. Once again, it looks like every other book from Kodansha. It has illustrations. Yes, my beloved. And I don't even want to talk about it because it would be very spoilery, but it indeed is like the most, I don't, yeah, it would be like the most creative mystery novel NisiOisiN has written, because it just like plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, and it gets to a point that it gets like pretty crazy, like you don't even know what you're reading anymore. Definitely my second favorite volume of the Sekai series. I can't wait to read more. But yeah, this is like very amazing. Next up, more NisiOisiN. Yay. This one is also a book that I read, I think, in January. It's called Lipogura. And this one is also a non-series book by NisiOisiN. And it is also very crazy on the aspect of illustrations, because I can't read all the names, but these are the names of the illustrators. The ones that I can recognize are Junjito and Koji Kumeta, and that's pretty much the only two I recognize. But yes, this is a pretty amazing book. Not the best non-series book of NisiOisiN I've read again, but the concept behind it is pretty amazing. Like it's a short story collection that it's 3 stories long, but the thing is that every one of that every of those 3 stories are rewritten many times following lipogram rules, which is a very interesting concept. For example, the first story, which is, I think, yes, the first story is called My Little Sister is a Killer. The second one is called Gamble. How would it be translated? The Mountain of Money? No, that wouldn't be it. And then the last one is called The Logical Society, which is my favorite story of this book. But here, as you can see, here is the first story, second story, third story, and then there is the table of contents, which with each story marked by the times it was rewritten as a lipogram. For example, here is the original story. Like this one is done completely freely, and then there is with challenge A, challenge B, challenge C, and challenge D. And every one of these is like, well, every one of these are the same stories but rewritten to follow certain lipogram rules. For example, here the prohibited words, like no, not words like letters. He can't use words which contain certain letters, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Like he has to rewrite every story, but with the difficulty added of you're not able to use, I don't know, words with e and things like that. And it definitely is pretty interesting, with the exception of the fact that rereading the many story many times, like even if it's different, or how to call it, different, or yeah, even it's written different, it's still at the end of the day the same story. So it does get very boring. Like the base stories are 20 pages each, and having to reread them, well, as many times as you have to do if you want to read the entirety of the book, which I did, it does get pretty very tedious would be the word. And yeah, it's like the concept of it's pretty fun, and yeah, I really like the first and third stories of the book, but that's pretty much it. Another pretty fun thing is that here are the illustrators, that he also wrote the afterward in different lipogram difficulties. Here the letters he can't use, and like level 1, level 2, and level 3. That's pretty fun book, but not the most entertaining read. Like it definitely gets tedious after a while. Then we're moving on to more NisiOisiN, I guess. This one isn't a novel, but it is a manga. It's the special edition of the Bakemonogatari manga. And what to say, I don't want to get killed online. Like, I, the art is pretty amazing, and like they always come with, where is it? They always come with a little short story written by Nisio, which it's pretty entertaining. But manga wise, I really don't like the Bakemonogatari manga. I own the first 6 volumes, but this one took me like an entire year to read because I just didn't want to. It's not. It's the art. It's good, but I don't know the story. The story changes so greatly, and I don't know. There are many things I don't like about it. Like the art, pretty amazing, but overall, I don't think Monogatari works as a manga. Oh well, I can't get this back on the box. Next up, more NisiOisiN, I guess. Please free me from this hell. Well, this one is called Ningyo ga Ningyo, or Ningyo is Ningyo. It is pretty fucking crazy. It is again a non-series book by NisiOisiN, and well, as you can tell, it's pretty short. I think it's not even 200 pages long, but this is the craziest and I don't know, most experimental book NisiOisiN, in my opinion, has ever written. Like it's very pretty, but yeah, it's like written in pretty difficult Japanese, and the contents itself themselves are like so abstract and crazy. Yeah, it's definitely a very crazy book. It's about this unnamed narrator who has I don't know, like 20 little sisters or something like that, and the story revolves about that, but also a lot of crazy things. Like It definitely is very, very crazy. I don't think he has written something like this ever since, but it's a pretty fun read. It's definitely, I don't know if to call it my favorite, one of my favorite Nisio books, but yeah, it's pretty much that. Yeah, next up, this one. This one is not a book. Well, it is a book in the sense that it is a book, but it isn't a novel. It's the how do you call it, the literary magazine Faust, which got translated to English. Well, the first two volumes got translated to English, and I got the entire well, not the entire, most of the series. I got till volume 7, and I'm planning on reading everything. This volume is a lot of was a lot of fun. I read the entirety of, I don't know how many pages it is. It's like around 500 pages. Yeah. And a lot of fun. It contains stories by authors such as Maijo Otaro, as Yuya Sato, NisiOisiN, and I can't remember the how this guy was called. He was the game director of Dino Shokutai, which is a pretty cool horror PS1 game, and this was his first, I think, like novel, well, story. This one, it's called Lost Time, and overall, I think I enjoyed a lot this volume. It has like my favorite short story of all time, The Drill Hole in My Brain by Maijo Otaro, and it comes with color illustrations. The English edition doesn't. Then there is the Red Moscow Mule by Sato Yuya, which is the second entry on the gray colored Diet Coke series. Well, series book. Let me see here. The red color Moscow Mule. This, I don't know. I enjoyed it, but it definitely is pretty much the most violent and, yeah, the most violent thing I ever read. It's pretty gruesome. I can see a lot of people disliking it like a lot, but hey, I kind of like it, I think. Next up, well, it's just more short stories. There's this one, Lost Time, and well, the rest are just interviews or talk sessions or essays. For example, there is this pretty amazing essay right over here. This one, it's called Material the Born of Material Fiction by, I can't remember the name, but I did remember the name of this author. It's called, where is it? The one of Lost Time. Doing this with one hand is difficult. This one is Kenji Eno. Finally remember. But yeah, the essay of the birth of material fiction was a lot of fun. It's pretty crazy how it almost convinced me on reading visual novels, which I really don't like. But it's a pretty good read. Like I actually wish it got translated. But this is the, I don't know, first chapter. It goes on next volume. A lot of fun. Another thing on this volume that I had read before, so I just skipped on this magazine, was the first chapter of Mahou Shoujo Risuka, Shinhonkaku Mahou Shoujo Risuka, which is also a lot of fun. I already recommended the manga. It's pretty good. And finally, it has a pretty nice manga by the illustrator of the Sekai series, which I just talked about. It's called Don't Trust Over 30. The author is Tagro. Pretty good. Overall, I really like this magazine. It's like pretty colorful. The stories are very very distinct in tone, and it's just like very pretty overall. And like all my favorite authors come in one, how to call it, in one magazine. It was a truly fun read that took me a lot of time to read. Like my favorite authors like Maijo Otaro, NisiOisiN, and Seiryouin Ryuusui, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. Yeah, this one has the Seiryouin Ryuusui super interview, which was also a lot of fun to read. I really like Faust. I really wish it went on for more than 8 volumes. I think it's all they cut. But yeah, next up, what haven't I talked about? Finally, let's move on to the best author I read this year. Well, I discovered this year, which is Maijo Otaro, which I already mentioned on the Faust book for having written the best short story of all time, The Real Hole of My Brain. And this is not a book, but I did read it in Japanese. Read it, saw it. It's called Butai Nek D Stage, which is a pretty fun like stage mystery drama thing about these guys that suddenly are buried till their necks one day. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Then next up, let's move on to the series that has sucked the entirety of my soul away. The Natsukawa Family Saga by Maijo Otaro. First off, there is Smoke, Soil, or Sacrifices. This was the 19th Mephisto Prize winner, and it's well written by Maijo Otaro, and it's also the first volume of the series. I don't even know what to say about it. Like this book has been well, this entire series has been in my mind since I read it, and that was like what half a year ago. And this is about this um, surgeon, Japanese surgeon working in the USA, and suddenly gets called to back to Japan because his mom got hit on the head by a criminal, and then he goes back to Japan and says, "Fuck it, I'm going to solve this case." And yeah, that's what the book's about. It's like pretty violent, pretty fast, like crazy fast paced. Like the amount of things crammed in this book are amazing. Like the author just has this primordial fear of hitting the enter key. Like the paragraphs just go on and on and on. It's pretty amazing read, like pretty good mystery novel. And yeah, next up, it's the second volume of the Natsukawa saga, The Childish Darkness, which very probably is my favorite or second favorite book of all time. Like this book, it's just fucking crazy. Like I can't explain how crazy it is. Like it's the direct sequel to Smoke Solar Sacrifices, which also weird flex, but okay, I own two identical copies of each book. But this is about the what is it? Older brother of the protagonist of this book. The protagonist of this book is called Shiro, which is a surgeon, and the protagonist of this book is his elder brother Saburo, which is a mystery writer, well, mystery novelist, and it just gets crazy, like pretty crazy. It's like the direct continuation of Smoke Solo Sacrifices and how they basically what happens after the crime in this book, after the mystery. And yeah, it's like if you expect something like this, you're not gonna get that. It's like even crazier, even more violent. The mysteries just keep going and going, and it's just you'd have to read it to understand it. But one of the best books I've read in my entire life. I just can't, like, just thinking about it. I get goosebumps because holy shit, it's amazing. Then there is not really the third volume of the Natsukawa saga, but technically it is part of the saga. Like, I don't know if to consider it a spin off, because this is called The World is Made Out of Closed Rooms, which is pretty thin book. It was written for the Kodansha Novels 25th anniversary, if I remember correctly, which was writing a mystery book about locked rooms in under 200 pages, 250 pages. And yeah, it's also pretty good. It starts this detective called Rumbaba 12, and crime he solves. And the thing as to why I consider this part of the saga is because the narrator of this book, Saburo, is technically, like, in universe, he is the writer of this book, the Rumbaba 12 series, which is mentioned since the start of the first book. And that's a pretty cool thing about Maijo Otaro, like a book that isn't related to these two, but it kinda is, because the narrator of this book wrote, technically, well, in canon, wrote this book. It gets pretty confusing, but also pretty cool. It's I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, just imagine what the story is about a book called The World is Made of Closed Rooms. And yeah, I don't want to talk about it because it would be very spoilery to even say what it is about. What's next? The stupidity. Next is this fucking beast of a book, which from Seiryouin Ryuusui, which I already mentioned from Faust, which he had a pretty nice, pretty amazing interview with Katsushi Ota. And yeah, this was the second winner of the Mephisto Prize. Smoke was the 19th winner. And yes, this is cosmic detective myth of the end of the century. And there are just so many good books I read this year, and this is definitely one of them. This book took me 4 months to read. It's, I think, the second longest book I've read in Japanese, being around, what is it, 700 pages. It's pretty amazing. Like, it's part of the JDC series, which I had previously mentioned, from NisiOisiN having written a tribute, which Maijo Otaro also wrote a tribute to this series called Tsukumojuku. But here you can see. Well, let's see. Here, the JDC tribute series. Where is it? This one. I think they're called Triple Play Saburo and no, Double Down Saburo and Triple Play Sekiguro, which are like based on the universe of these novels. I have yet to read them, but yeah, that's really interesting to hear NisiOisiN wrote a book based on this series. This is a book very crazy. It's a very crazy book by a very crazy individual, which is about this detective club. Yes, it's called the Japanese Detective Club, which is like an organization with Japan's biggest detectives. And suddenly one day in the new year, they get a fax by the so-called locked room lord. I'm going to drink a bit of water. Give me a sec. By the locked room lord. And what the fact says is I'm going to paraphrase because I'm too lazy to read it out loud. But it basically says this year there will be 1,200 lockroom killings. No one can stop it. And well, it, the JDC is the Japanese detective club are just like, well, well, I guess, yes. And that's what happens. Like this book is about solving the mystery of how and why this so-called lockroom lord is killing 1,200 people in Japan during this year. And I just can't explain how the the Seiryouin Daisetsu work, but it is like nothing I've ever read before. Like it isn't just a story about about characters. It's like a story about the world. It gets pretty meta. It's pretty crazy, but definitely one of my favorite books. And also, if you, if I'm not talking like pretty in depth of the books or anything, like I wrote, I did written reviews of most of these books, so you can just go and check my Goodreads account instead. Because my written English is definitely better than my spoken. Like, I mean, I have a pretty easy time with written English, but when it comes to talking, as you can tell, I get pretty mixed up. I say a lot of expressions in Spanish, and yeah, it's pretty messy. In any case, if you want to read more about my thoughts on any of these books in general, you can just check my Goodreads, and that'll be easier. Next up, the absolute beast of the series. This is my top one series of NisiOisiN and my top one series, well, in general of all time, Saregoto series, the nonsense series. The first three volumes have been translated to English by Vertical, now Kodansha. And yes, this is the entirety of the series. This is the Japanese limited edition box set. And I'm going to open it. And yes, starting this year, 2021, I decided I wanted to read the entirety of my favorite series in Japanese, and that's exactly what I did. And now that 2022 is about to start, I'm going to read the sequel spin-off series Ningen. But yeah, I read the entirety of Saregoto. Here is the first volume, which was also a Mephisto Prize winner, such as Cosmic and Smoke Sodor Sacrifices. This one, yes, this is what I wanted. This is pretty interesting because Seiryouin Ryuusui, the absolute madman which wrote Cosmic, also wrote the these things are called belly bands in English, but obi in Japanese. He wrote the obi for the first printing of the decapitation cycle, which it's pretty nice to see. Like one of the best mystery writers in history write like a note to a debuting writer, NisiOisiN, and praising the hell out of him. It's like pretty wholesome. Next up, it is my actual favorite book of all time. Um, Strangulation, Kubishime Romanticisto. Next up is another pretty short book, and many may not know this, but Kubitsuri High School was written for the same um, challenge as the world is made of closed rooms, like the write a locked room mystery in under so many pages. And yeah, that's the reason as to why the third volume of Saregoto is so small. Both of these didn't won, but I don't think it was an actual prize competition. It was more like a challenge to the writers. But yeah, that's the reason as to why Kubitsuri High School is so short. Let me get this on here. Next up, There is, I have another one of these, the basic text of NisiOisiN. Then there is the uh, NisiOisiN sign, which is like you are supposed to hang it here because it looks like the um, trunk tag, or however they call. And this looks like just like a trunk. Next up, it's the fourth volume of the series, Psychological. I really wish Kodansha USA hurried up and released Psychological 1, Psychological 2. And yeah, it's probably my second favorite arc in the entirety of Saragoto. But it has been like, I don't know, 4 years, 3 years since we last got a volume in English, and they are pretty amazing. Like, peak mystery. Next up, I have the second best volume of this series, the here Cannibal Magical, which is also it's a pretty thick book. I think it's the longest of the series, and it's like so amazing. It's like one of the yeah. Saragoto is my favorite series, so it would be, if it's my second favorite volume of Saragoto, it would be one of my favorite books of all time. It's pretty good. Next up, the start of Uprooted Radical, Nekosogi Radical 1, 2, and 3. This is the end of Saragoto, which I'm not going to talk about it. I already did a pretty emotional written review on it. And finally, the thing we may actually never get translated, which I read in its entirety, the Saragoto Dictionary. And yes, it's as it sounds, it's just a dictionary about Saragoto characters and terminology. And yeah, it goes like in the Japanese syllabary order, like Aiueo, Kakiku Keko, until the. And yeah, it's pretty much just a dictionary. But yeah, it talks like about the series, about the characters, about the books, and about also about other NisiOisiN series, and maybe things not related to his series. I remember, I don't know in which entry it was, but yeah, NisiOisiN basically says, "Oh yes, I use this version of Microsoft Word," and yeah, it's a dictionary. I read the entirety of it. The how many pages? 370 pages of a dictionary, but it was like a pretty fun read because overall it was like, I mean, it's Saragoto, the my favorite series of all time, and just reading like the thoughts of or the inspirations that came with it, it was like a lot of fun. Next up, here it's the Saragoto Ichiban. Uh, how is it called? Yonkoma manga for panel manga, which is also pretty fun. It comes with more, but I don't feel like comfortable showing a lot of on camera. I'm going to get sued by Kodansha or whatever. And yeah, that's was almost an hour. That's pretty much everything I read this year. And once again, this video was done unscripted. It was done like because I really have nothing better to do. And I mean, it was. I don't know if it was a lot of fun. Like talking about books is always a lot of fun, but doing it on camera and not in your first language, it can get like pretty difficult pretty quickly. Like I don't think I talked as much as I wanted as about these books. But hey, like at least I did a pretty fun video which no one is gonna watch. Let me. Oh my god, I'm trying to. Doing this with one hand is such a headache. Well, and yeah, that's pretty much everything I read in Japanese this year. But I've also read other books. This is December. I've read Ashura Girl by Maijo Otaro and also Kuma no Basho by Maijo Otaro. But those are going to be, I don't know if I'll do a video next week, but yeah, they'll be for next year. Okay, finally manage it. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. If you want to subscribe, don't be. And if you want to leave your like, leave a like. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I read a lot of good books. If you want to actually read in a understandable way what I thought thought about these books, you can always head to my Goodreads where I do written reviews of all of them. Yeah, I think I reviewed every single one of these books in text form, which is like very much better of a read than what I did here, like talking unscripted, not knowing what I'm saying. But yeah, if I said something stupid, please don't kill me by because of it. And yeah, subscribe, leave a like, and don't subscribe, I think. And yeah, that's about it. Goodbye.